Hello, guys, and welcome to the Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group's UCMC's podcast, where our analysts convene to delve into the realms of Russian disinformation, propaganda, and the influence of hybrid warfare in 2024. In these succinct podcast episodes, the team explores either recent analysts, observations, debunking analyses we have done recently as well, and sharing their expert opinions and conclusions on the prevailing challenges within the information sphere against Russia today. Our topic of discussion today is a generalized debunking of Russian narratives, which we have noticed over the last month. My name is Wickham. I will be the host today, and I will be speaking with my colleagues. So guys, to start off, I will start with my narrative, which I want to debunk, and then we will go straight over to you guys. So the narrative which I'm going to debunk is concerning Macron and the recent statements he's made about potential troops deployment in Russia. Russian propaganda is in a frenzy over these statements. A strange shift in tone from Macron himself, who wants do-gooder of Russia, wanting peace talks with Russia, telling how Ukraine needs to sit behind the stool of negotiations right before the war began and at the beginning, which we all know came to nothing. It was quite an embarrassment for him and for Europe, and just one more confirmation that Europe struggles to understand both Russia and Ukraine. Later, after these comments, he confirmed that it wasn't just an off-the-cuff suggestion, but it was a weighed and thought through and calibrated decision. And he has even gone further since to say if the line of convergence was to move closer to either Kyiv or Odessa, then the French troops will have to come and interfere. So obviously through that, Russian propaganda is now in a frenzy, not knowing how to react and what the significance of the situation is. We have got the majority of NATO leaders currently saying that there is no consensus for this, but we have seen Canada and the Baltic countries welcoming the idea. And yes, so we've seen Russian propaganda trying to interpret his claims, portraying him as a mere puppet of the US. Whilst the US can't help Ukraine out, Ukraine needs some kind of a moral support, and these statements are just of a moral nature. This one is from Zakharova. Or he's just a leader who is desperate to reclaim his lost influence, they're saying. But we all know that Russian propaganda always needs a scapegoat and a weekly target to direct their hate. And this has been Macron over the last few weeks. But why the panic? So obviously if it was to happen, it would potentially end all future imperialistic ambitions of the Russian Federation. So obviously screams for nuclear war have started again. We expect that these screams for nuclear war to continue and be hyped up over the next few weeks, months. We've heard propagandists talk about the current personnel, Western personnel in Ukraine. They talk about it as if it's no significance, saying that there are foreign legions in Ukraine, many special operators in Ukraine from Western militaries performing missions for their own governments, and they put it as inconsequential and something that Russia will just eventually kill off. We've seen lots about a lot of French soldiers dying in Kharkiv, if I remember correctly, and Russian propaganda has never used the this is going over the red line, one of red lines of Putin's, as a reason to start nuclear war. They've just seen it as inconsequential. They've also talked about this year, apparently, according to Russian propaganda, there will be an increase of 1,000 to 5,000 NATO personnel in Ukraine throughout the year, and again, inconsequential. And they're also trying to say that the reason as to why they're in Ukraine is because Ukraine is not trusted with a Western modern-day technology. So the West and their military has to be in Ukraine to be able to work, such as Patriot and all the other advanced systems. We've also got other propagandists saying that the West once feared these red lines at the beginning, but now they don't. And this is one of the reasons why propaganda is fearful, because they understand that the West now is starting to see these red lines as more symbolic and not substantive, because they've never held true. You've got Zakharova and Mikheyev talking about Macron and trying to dehumanize him in any way possible, to degrade his influence on the West and his voters, talking about his politics, his personal life, his homosexual cabinet. They talk about obviously propaganda. When they don't know what to do, when they are in a state of of a frenzy, they go for a personal attack. And then you've obviously got the significant comments from Putin, feeling that he had to come out himself and caution against sending troops to Ukraine, threatening tragic consequences once again, as we heard at the beginning of this full-scale war 2 years ago. But he obviously shows here that he doesn't believe his propaganda is strong enough to validate his red line propaganda, and so he has to come out, and the highest echelons of the Russian Federation has to issue these new warnings. But it really just shows the depth of the panic in the Kremlin, signaling that, again, propaganda is not working. And these statements have only grown kind of more resolute and determined for Macron and Western leaders since. So just to sum up, the discrepancy between Russian propaganda's warning and their dire consequences, as Putin says, if Western soldiers and NATO soldiers were to enter Ukrainian territory, and then at the same time acknowledging that the soldiers are already in Ukraine, but not calling for any red line consequences, highlights the contradictory nature of the Kremlin and its inability to follow through with its warnings. They caution about Western military involvement while simultaneously admitting that the West is involved. It doesn't really make any sense. So, as Europe assumes this leading role in Ukraine's defense, obviously, whilst we've still got the deadlock in the US, Macron is now trying to emerge as the potential leader, and this presents a positive opportunity for Ukraine and Europe. However, Russian propaganda will, over the next coming weeks, months, intensify efforts to instill fear among the Western audience and their leaders, hinting of the possibility of a nuclear escalation, as we are seeing once again, and continued attack on Macron, seeing him as irrational and unstable, and having left the bloc of NATO, no longer portraying the same kind of images which NATO wants to himself. So that is my narrative. What about you, Volodymyr? I hear today we're going to speak about Yulia Navalnya. So obviously there's lots that's been going on over the last 3 weeks since Alexei Navalny's death. So tell us more about your narrative, please.
I'd like to tell a little more about not just simply as a narrative of Russian propaganda, but how Russia tries to use the Western attempts to deceive itself regarding the matter of Russian liberal opposition. And since the death of the leader of Russian opposition, Alexei Navalny, his widow Yulia Navalnya became a figure of number one among perception of Westernness regarding the Russian political opposition, and we are witnessing that Western elites, political elites, make a bet on Yulia Navalnya as a newborn leader of Russian opposition. However, from my perspective, it is a mistake, because the West is looking to the Russia through the lenses of liberal democracy, and that doesn't work. Just simply look at the Russian history of the last 100 years. There were no women that played a significant role in Russian policy. We may just bring several examples. If we talk about the history of Soviet Union, there were just Ekaterina Furtseva, who held the position of Minister of Culture, and also she was a member of Politburo of Communist Party, but she never played a significant role in the decision-making of the higher political elites of Soviet Union. Anyway, if we look at Putinist Russia, the most prominent figure of Putin's elite is Valentina Matvienko. By the way, she was born in Ukraine. However, she held the position of senator from St. Petersburg, and from 2003 up to 2011, she was a governor of St. Petersburg. Anyway, she doesn't play any crucial role in Russian policy, and she is just a servant of Putin's will. That means that a woman doesn't play really a significant role in Russian political culture, and it doesn't depend on the will of the West. It is as it is, and the Western elites, especially in the United States, should bring more attention to those representatives of Russian opposition that hold military power, that may bring a new order in Russia, and Russians will rely on them because they have military strength behind that.
Well, Roger, I have one quick question for you. So you're saying obviously the West is betting on Yulia Navalny as the next Alexei Navalny as the next strong opposition in Russia, but we're obviously seeing quite a lot of destroying disinformation from Russian propaganda at the moment, trying to completely dehumanize Yulia, telling how she was a cheat, telling how creating photos with different leaders, different oppositionists. Are these disinformation campaigns so far, are they working on the Western audience, or is it more just for an internal Russian audience?
And the posture of bringing to their broader audiences the figure of Yulia Navalnya is more about the perception of Western societies, and the invitation for to visit the White House and Congress to Yulia Navalnya was completely about the voter of Joseph Biden. That make no sense in terms of making a political career of Yulia Navalnya in Russia. Yulia Navalnya is not a figure that can unite Russians under her rule or her party that she will represent. Anyway, the death of Alexei Navalny, maybe it sounds like rather cynical, but anyway, death of the former leader of Russian opposition open a space for new leaders that may overcome this crisis of Russian liberal opposition and act in a more severe way and defend their power, their will to sustain the regime in Russia with the arms in their hands.
Absolutely, make some kind of changes instead of just another online presence. We will definitely keep monitoring this over the next few months, I'm sure, Volodymyr, so then you can let the guys and the listeners know in a few months' time how this is progressing. Thank you, Volodymyr. And last but definitely not least, Anton. Anton, so today you're going to be talking about how Russia diminishes Ukrainian victories on the front line. Tell us more about this. What do you mean? What have you been seeing recently?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. And last month, Russian propagandists had a difficult task, really difficult, to explain somehow the loss of a large amount of military aircrafts and ships. So for this, they tried to diminish the capabilities of Ukrainian industry and the skills of Ukrainian military. Mostly it sounds as something like why Ukrainians, precisely they used word hohols, which is derogative for Ukrainians, why Ukrainians are losing all aircraft destroyed by British systems or American or etc. and with British or any else from Ukrainian partners operators, and were bought with any but not Ukrainian money. So, for example, we can see how Russian propaganda tried to describe the loss of large Russian amphibious assault ship Cesar Kunikov, start of station. The strike was carried out by a British drone, which is assembled in Ukraine under a new name and logo, but under the precise control of Britons. We talked about it many times, and even insiders said that British mass media, especially filmed the story, and that it was an Ukrainian unmanned system of a Western model. After that, Ukrainian armed force shot down a merchant ship of Russian fleet. By the way, as usual, American scout planes were in the Black Sea and flew away after the operation. So in this way, Russia trying to discredit the ability of the Ukrainian authorities to achieve results on the battlefield in the eyes, especially in Ukrainian population. But however, we see that in Ukraine, the industry is actively developing and on a producing unmanned system that some kind of game changer of this war, and therefore to accuse Ukrainian partners of helping with technologies is, to say at least, ridiculous, because some Russian systems are based on the system of their allies. The best example is Iran and the production of Shahed in Russia. There were also reports that the Russian Lancet drones positioned by Russian propagandists as exclusively Russian development are primarily copied from the Israeli Hero 120 drone.
So basically, any victory that Ukraine is able to achieve in order to disinform the internal audience and not allow them to think that Ukraine, as they like to say, a smaller country or a smaller military, is able to beat and win over the Russian Federation. Yeah, so the way they do that is by saying it's thanks to the West, thanks to Western systems, thanks to Western troops and NATO, because it's too embarrassing to lose to Ukraine. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, guys, for your narratives today and for our debunking. That will be all for today, guys. If you want to check out our other videos, have a look in this podcast playlist, and be sure to check back in a few weeks' time, and we will have another debunking episode for you. Thank you, and goodbye.